Hey, honey,
Yes, Barry?
let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Así viviendo este ritmo de palmas, sin naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. I'm your host, Harry Kessler, and I'm just so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination. Hey, maybe it's even yours, and that's Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. That music you're listening to is performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants. Those are the Lapa Lapa, Puerto Vallarta's oldest restaurant on the famous Los Muertos beach, and the El Dorado Restaurant and Beach Club right next door. So you can enjoy that fantastic view of the Los Muertos Pier all lit up at night in beautiful colors, or during the day in its grand splendor, for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, seated with your toes in the sand right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. This week we are going to talk with David Muck. David is the president of the Vallarta Garden Club, and he's going to tell us about how the club makes Vallarta an even more beautiful place. But before we get to David, let's see what's happening this week in Puerto Vallarta, the 15th of July, 2019. Places are beginning to take some time off for slow season here in Vallarta, so I just want to give you a heads up that Jorge Tovar from Jorge's Hideaway and Shrimp Shack, they are going to be taking a well-deserved summer vacation. Last night actually was their last night, and then they come back and reopen October the 1st, so rest up, Jorge. We'll see you in October. And then Chenando's, one of my favorites over up Lazaro Cardenas. They are closed for vacation as well, also until October. I don't know what date in October, but I'll let you know as we get closer to the date. And Fernando and family, take a break, amigos. All right, I have a little update on the dam on the Rio Horcones. We've got some good news to tell you folks. First of all, a little background for those of you who haven't been following the saga. Let's just go over the story of the proposed hydroelectric dam on the Rio Horcones. The Rio Horcones, the Horcones River, it's a long river. It originates east of the town of El Tuito, up in the mountains, and it has actually carved a very beautiful canyon. And as it comes down the mountains past the botanical garden, it is just gorgeous. And then it follows the road. Actually, the road follows it. It goes alongside the big canyon there. That would be the Carretera 200. And it goes all the way down to and through the town of Boca de Timatlan and empties into the Pacific Ocean. That is the Rio Horcones. It is part and parcel of the Puerto Vallarta experience. It has been for years, forever, with the locals, of course, and with visitors. 35 years ago, when I came for my first visit to Puerto Vallarta, as part of the tour package, for the first time here, we took a bus ride up to Chicos Paradise, so up the Rio Horcones, and it was beautiful. I actually have some pics that I took in the show notes. I took these pictures back 35 years ago, and you can see how beautiful the place was then, and it still is gorgeous. Also on that first trip, we went to Boca de Timatlan to take a panga ride to Las Animas. I've got pictures of that too. That was part and parcel of the tours that people were going on back then, and people still do today. At any rate, it was discovered that heavy work was being done on the canyon by a passerby. And of course, inquiring minds need to know. And what do you know? They were building a hydroelectric dam on the Rio Horcones, just downstream from that beautiful place that we went to on our first trip, Chicos Paradise. And of course, the interesting part about this whole thing was that nobody downstream over in Boca de Tomatlan knew that this dam was being built. And it seemed that the heads of the ejido actually had sold out to these powers that be, and they began to build this dam, gave them permission to build the dam. There were demonstrations by the people of Boca de Tomatlan whose livelihoods were at risk, their way of life. They were protesting the environmental damage that was going to be caused. And if you want to have a good rundown, you want to go back a couple of episodes. The Tunnel Road Barbecue episode that I had with Jimmy Pluff, I discussed it in depth. And I have a link to that episode in the show notes. If you can't find it, it's at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. And just type in, hydroelectric dam. You will find all of the things that we talked about. At any rate, last week I talked about a planned protest on the Carretera 200 and Boca de Tomatlan, about 17 miles south of Puerto Vallarta. And they had plans to shut down that highway and protest and shut it down. They did. After discussions and negotiations, the work area where they were building the dam was padlocked, and a closerado sign was posted, closed sign was posted on the chain link fence. Let me read from Independente Nayarit Online. It's translated to English, so let me do my best here. The river is not for sale. The river defends itself. The community of Boca de Tomatlan by Viridiana Aguaye. And it reads, and she is a student in science for development, sustainability, and tourism. The people of Puerto Vallarta defend the water and join in a single voice. No to the dam in Los Horcones River, which is intended to be built with the threat of serious environmental risks, as well as using its resources to satisfy the ambition of the tourist real estate developments. This before the disputes over water that currently prevail in the different destinations of the entire bay, from Sayulita, Nayarit, to the municipality of Cabo Corrientes, Jalisco. From the early hours of Tuesday, July 9th, 2019, and until the afternoon, a demonstration was held that consisted of taking the Federal Highway 200 at the height of Boca de Tomatlan for a few hours and intermittently, in order that the authorities of the three levels of government follow up on the complaints filed in different instances, with the main demand for the total closure of the work. Since February of this year, the community of Boca de Tomatlan has witnessed the destruction of its natural environment without knowing for sure what was happening in the Los Horcones River basin that flows into this town. Derived from inquiries from various actors such as the Academy, social organizations, ecotourism workers, and the general population, they discovered that the company Energía Verde Mayer S.A. de CV is building a hydroelectric plant on the river between the limits of the municipality of Puerto Vallarta and Cabo Corrientes. As soon as possible, those affected were given the task of taking legal action, protection, denunciations to the municipalities of Cabo Corrientes and Puerto Vallarta, Profepa, for flagrant actions when building on land without valid permits or using land not included in the permits that the company has, the affectation to the jungle and the cause of the river, the use of explosives without proper information to the community, as well as absence of recognition of the rights of the community and the ejido founded since July 5th, 1937, as dictated by the petition of the social movement. The ejidos of the aforementioned communities made arrangements in the first instance with the town councils and later with the Semarnat, on which all of these grievances are sustained, given that no information meeting was held towards the community, let alone consultation on the management of the water resource. Likewise, the existence of technical and precise project information, such as environmental impact manifestations, is unknown. Parallel to this, academic community, mainly from the University of Guadalajara, has held information forums with the community in general in which the environmental, economic, and social and cultural impacts of the construction of the hydroelectric plant in the region are discussed, concluding that great biodiversity of flora, hundreds of trees have been cut down, and wildlife, among which endemic and migratory birds, felines, and river otters are at risk. During the last demonstration, the community demonstrated that through organization, is possible to defend natural resources, defend life in the interests of hotel companies in collusion with the authorities of the three levels of government, even with the intimidation that the state, sending along deployment of state police and his squadron of federal police and the brand new National Guard, giving a message and showing muscle to replicate the community, which for no reason gave way back in its objective. As part of the negotiations, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency carried out an operation where the construction maneuvers were completed, such as dynamiting large rocks very close to local communities. The fear of residents of Boca de Tomatlan that the water is taken away is not unfounded. In this year, the disputes over water have subjected the entire region to dynamics of social conflict which have led to the mobilization of the population in Sayulita, Punta de Mita, Cruz de Juanacuatzle, Bucerias, Rataderas, Nayarit, as well as Puerto Vallarta and Cabo Corrientes de Jalisco, in defense of their most vital resource, water. All this in a global context of savage capitalism, in which wars over water are the daily bread, even with the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations that establishes that access to sources of safe drinking water, as well as sanitation, they are an essential right for the full enjoyment of life and all human rights. And I have a link to that article in the show notes. It's in Spanish, and that Google Translate works pretty good. Not the best, but works pretty good. And you can translate it in your Google Translate app too. But very interesting. She talks about all the things that we've talked about here on the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show, including water shortages all around the bay. So, anyway, I was given some video footage of workers that were drilling holes in the rocks and in the boulders in the riverbed where the dam was planned, and I embedded it into the show notes. And you can find it, of course, at the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show.com. You can also go to my my Facebook page, the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show Facebook page, and I've got it embedded there. And I got to tell you, it is such a relief to have this project finally halted. But there are very, very powerful people that we're dealing with here. And my feeling is, and the feeling of many, is they won't stop. So we need to keep up the pressure, make sure that they don't take that river and the livelihoods of these people from Boca de Tomatlan. Let me tell you, it was great to see them shut it down. And to the protesters and to la gente de Boca de Tomatlan, bravo, bravo. Keep it up. Stay strong, guys. All right. I love getting listener emails. As you know, I got one the other day that really warmed my heart. I'm going to tell you, this guy isn't an overachiever. Big lie. This guy is a huge overachiever. Here, listen to this. His name is Eric, and he writes, thank you, Barry. First of all, thanks for the effort that you put into your podcast. This email is long in coming. My wife and I traveled to Puerto Vallarta last August. Oh, yeah. It is long in coming, isn't it? to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. And while we were planning our trip at the beginning of 2018, I looked up Puerto Vallarta in my podcast app, and I found your show. I'm so glad that I did. We initially intended to stay at an all-inclusive, but after listening to a few of your shows, found that most of your guests recommended not doing that. I devoured as many episodes of your podcast as I could and made a loose itinerary of what we wanted to do and what we wanted to accomplish during our week there. I posted a very long trip report on TripAdvisor, which you can read here, and he gave me a link to that, so I'll have that in the show notes. In short, we took your advice and we booked a beautiful Airbnb just steps away from the ocean in the romantic zone and enjoyed food at Lapa Lapa, Pancho's Tacos, Gabby's, Joe Jack's, Tony's Please, Las Guerras, Coco's, Cuatecicuetes, Freddy's, Toucan, Memos, and a few others. Some of the adventures that we went on were the ATV zipline tour at Canopy River, which we booked through JR. We took a panga out to Yalapa, and we walked to the waterfall. Went on a day cruise with Alley Cat Sailing Adventures, and spent a night in Sayulita. Wow. I think we fit in more than most would in a week. Wow, they did that all in a week. But I would do it again tomorrow, he writes. As you know, we went during the rainy season, and being accustomed to California weather reports, we live near Sacramento. We were a bit nervous about how the weather would dampen our plans. We used our umbrella once and didn't take it out with us after the first day of walking around town. Even though we haven't made plans to return yet, I still faithfully listen to your podcast and can't wait for our next trip. We've already discussed bringing our friends, family, and kids, we have 3 little ones, along with us next time. Keep up the good work, and thank you, Eric. So I have a link, like I said, to his TripAdvisor trip report if you want to read the whole longer version, but that was pretty great. Thank you. Thanks for using JR too, by the way. Booking your tour through VallartaInfo.com is the way that we like to do it here at the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. So thanks for doing that, and way to go. All right, let's get on with the interview, shall we? There's all kinds of charities in Puerto Vallarta. There's animal rescues, there's child rescues, scholarship funds, shoes for kids. I mean, the list goes on. And as I've said time and time again, the expat community that lives in Puerto Vallarta, well, many of them, not by all means all of them. In fact, I wish more of the pensioners who live there and take advantage of all that Puerto Vallarta and Mexico, especially the kind people of Puerto Vallarta have to offer, their welcoming attitude and all that. I wish that some of the people would find a little more time to give back, but many do. And this particular group of volunteers are into beautification, beautifying the streets and the parks in Puerto Vallarta with plantings and little planters. And what you'll hear a lot about are these little planting installations. And we'll talk with our next guest, and our next guest is David Muck. David is the president of the Puerto Vallarta Garden Club. And I was really surprised at how the Garden Club does more than plant, right? They build, too. It's part of the beautification thing. They work really closely with the city government, as you can imagine. And so very, very interesting conversation that we're going to hear right now. I was coming to the end of my latest visit to Paradise and running out of time to meet with David. We had made plans, but finally we were able to get together. He is a busy, busy guy. This guy's got meetings left and right. And so I was really happy to get the opportunity to sit down and talk with David at his condo, beautiful condo overlooking the Bahia de Banderas, early on a beautiful Vallarta May morning. So let's go right now and meet a very interesting guy. He's going to tell you about a very interesting organization in our very beautiful Puerto Vallarta. So let's go right now. Let's meet David Muck, the president of the Vallarta Garden Club. David, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and what was your path to Puerto Vallarta?
Okay, I was originally from Houston, Texas, and originally came here just to go on vacation. You know, at the time there was a lot of daily flights from Continental from Houston to Vallarta, and
Continental. Wait a minute. What year was this?
Oh gosh, it was about 15 years ago.
Okay.
I love nature, so the idea of coming down here to see all the mountains and the jungles and the water was really appealing to me. My partner and I at the time had a house in Santa Fe, still do have a house in Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's where we now live in addition to Vallarta. And so this was a good contrast to Santa Fe. Santa Fe is a very high desert, dry city, historic city. So to come to Vallarta and have all the nature and the beauty here was really appealing to me. So after many vacations here, like many people, we got hooked and decided to come on down and get a place here. So we've been here about 9 years, having a house here.
Wow. So that's wonderful. Now, so you do the are you here during the summer months when it's really hot and warm?
Actually, I have been here in the summertime, and in fact, because I love gardening so much, one of my favorite times to come down is the summer. I know a lot of people get spooked because of the humidity and the rain, but in the summertime, I personally think that this is the most beautiful time in Vallarta because everything is so green. Mm-hmm. The mountains are emerald green. All the plants are just gorgeous. When you drive down to the botanical garden, for example, like there's moss growing all on the highway. I just think it's gorgeous. So I tend to be here seasonally like everybody, November until about May or June, but I still love coming down in the summertime because it's so beautiful.
Okay. So tell us, there's a lot of people that come down here and they drink and smoke and eat and don't do anything else, maybe sleep too, but you have volunteered. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay, well, when I come from a very large family. I'm the oldest of 8 children, and we were a very poor family. We grew all of our own vegetables, raised all of our own animals that we had for food. And so my grandparents really instilled in me a love of gardening. And whenever I came to Vallarta, I have to say I retired a few years ago. I was president of a software company in the U.S. We sold our business, and I came down to Vallarta. And one of the things that I really loved so much about coming to Vallarta was visiting the Botanical Garden. And Bob Price from the Botanical Garden asked if I would get involved with the Garden Club, principally as a fundraiser initially, but then one thing led to another, and I became president of the organization. But my love of gardening and of plants is what kind of brought me to the PV Garden Club.
When was the Garden Club established?
The Garden Club was formally established in 2011, so we're on our way towards being 10 years old. And it's a Mexican nonprofit organization, completely privately funded, and volunteer-led. So all of the plantings that we do, for example, are all done by volunteers. And we're very grateful. We have about almost 100 volunteers throughout the course of the year that kind of pitch in and help us. In high season, for example, we go every Thursday out to various sections in Old Town and look after our plantings, plant new things, do a lot of pruning. We'll have 25 to 30 volunteers in high season. And then in the summer months, during low season, we'll have a 10 to 12 people that can help us get through the summer months. And our biggest challenge, like many gardens here in Vallarta, is in the high season because this is when we have no rain.
Yeah.
So you have to get out and water all your plants and really look after them just to keep them, through that 7-month period where we have no rain.
Right. So like you were looking at this next planting you did and you went, okay, we've got to water this one too.
Oh, yeah. They'll let you know when they're thirsty, so to speak.
Okay. So you have installations, you call them, around town. So what are these? What do these look like when people are walking around? How are they going to recognize what the garden club's doing?
Well, we have one distinctive way of identifying our projects, and that's that we use this orange color for all of our planting. The color was originally suggested by the city of Vallarta, but we really love it. It's a very, not historic, but it's a very authentic Mexican color. And so I always have this little saying, if it's orange, it's ours. So when you see these plantings on the streets, and there's about a dozen streets where we've planted all the plants, we put these orange, we call them jardineros, the planter boxes around these plantings just to protect the plants from mop water, from dogs, etc. And then we fill those areas in with beautiful bougainvillea and plants and things like that.
Yeah, and what a big difference you've made around town, I must say.
It has made such a huge difference. I can tell you, for example, if you walk along Paseo Badillo or Avenida Mexico and Centro, and you see, those bougainvilleas are now about 8 years old, and they're absolutely magnificent. We have to do a lot of pruning with them to keep them looking as good as they do, but it makes such a big difference in the local community. And one of the things that we decided to do as an organization was go to the streets that had the highest pedestrian traffic. So the streets that had the highest foot traffic, those were the streets that we intentionally said, let's come in and really try to make an impact on these streets.
Yeah, well, you certainly have. Now, you said something a little earlier about mop water. So Fabuloso gets in your plants, does it?
It can, actually. And for example, on Morelos right now, the city had asked us to plant some plantings on this street, which is in Centro, but they forbid us to put a ring around put some form of protection around these plantings. And we've already lost 2 palms to this mop water. A lot of people, in the mornings they'll get out and they'll have this mixture of water and Fabuloso or bleach or some concoction. They'll get out and clean the streets, which is really important, the sidewalks. But this kind of water can really kill plants. And so these jardineras that we plant, these little planter rings and boxes, they're a form of protection that really is mandatory. So, yeah, mop water is not great for plants.
Yeah. Do you have, or do you ever get any issues with people stealing your plants, or with people having fun with your plants?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you ask this question, because when we first began planting, especially like on a busy street like Paseo Badillo, we would go out and we'd buy all these beautiful flowering plants, and then within a day they were gone. And so we quickly learned what we can plant that would not walk. So things like copper plants, coleuses, oleander. There's a palette of plants that we can put into the ground that, the theft just is not an issue. But yeah, if you put if you were to go to put geraniums and these sorts of beautiful flowering plants, they would walk very quickly.
Interesting.
It's part of what happens when you do public landscaping, by the way,
It's just, yeah.
It's the nature of the beast. So.
It is. Public landscaping.
Public landscaping, yeah.
Wow.
And that's what we really look at doing is we get a lot of requests, for example, to do private projects. We have people say, come to our condos. We want you to create a garden design for us, or, come to our villa. We need help, and we can do that privately. But as an organization, we only do public projects. We go into not just the streets, but some schools. We've been worked, for example, with OPC. Anything that involves the public in terms of paths or a public space, we would be interested in working with. For example, one project that we'd love to get involved with, and we've already made a landscaping plan for, is the Lazaro Cardenas Park.
Yeah.
And it's in the process of having these gorgeous mosaics put up everywhere. and we would like to once that project is finished, we've already made a landscape plan to come in and really make the park showcase all those beautiful mosaics.
Nice.
So we're always looking ahead to see what we can do next.
Sure. Where do you get all the money to do all this? How do you raise your funds?
Okay, well, that's a good question because we are completely privately funded. Our income comes from two sources. One, we have a large event every January, Fiesta. This year it's going to be Fiesta Tropical. It's going to be held at Oscars January 21st. This single event brings in about, I would say, 60 to 70% of our income. The remainder comes from member donations, and we're very fortunate. We have more than 200 people who donate annually to our organization, and these annual donations really do help sustain the organization. And these members are also our best volunteers. So there's always a parallel between the donation and the involvement of the members. So our best volunteers are also our best donors, but it's all privately funded.
Right.
No government funding. People sometimes assume, for example, last year we landscaped the plaza for the in celebration of the 100-year anniversary of Vallarta. And many people just assume that the city government does these things, but no, we made a landscape plan. We presented it to the city at the request of the municipal president here, and they loved the plan. And then we, over a 5-day period, worked night and day, beginning at 5 in the morning until late in the afternoon, like taking everything out and bringing new soil in, trimming all the trees, planting all the new plants, but all done with private donations.
Wow. That's a lot of work.
That was a huge project. In fact, I think we had about 6 or 7 truckloads of plants, and there was at least a couple times on that day where I had this thought running through my mind: are you guys insane? Are we insane? Because it was really, for a volunteer-led organization, it was a very ambitious project. Of course, it's made such a difference. The plaza in front of the Iglesia de Guadalupe is probably, apart from the Malecón, it's probably the most visited area of Vallarta, and it looks so beautiful now to have all those beautiful plants and the color in there.
Yeah, that was huge. Beautiful.
It was a huge project. And before that, we had done the Pier Street. The Pier Street was the project that really caught the attention of the city government, because before, there was not really much there, and so we came in and we have some great talent in our group. We had a landscape architect, Tom Sparling, who made a plan for that particular street, volunteered his time, and then we were fortunate to get the donations to fund it and then make it a reality. It took about a year to make that project happen. We first had to get not just the support of the city, because the city has to give us permission and permits for everything we do, but we also needed to get the kind of support of the local merchants on the street.
Right.
And at first there was some opposition to that because they thought, oh, you're going to block the view that we have, so when people are walking by, they won't be able to see our business, etc. But I will do a plug for Cindy, who owns Archie's Walk. I love her to death. She loves gardens and she loves plants. And she said, come in and let's do my section as a prototype. And then the guys next door who own that bar said, come on and do ours at the same time. So once we did those two, and they were looking so beautiful, then the little taco place next door said, come in and do ours. And so it just kind of snowballed. Sure. Dee said, yeah, come and do ours in front of my coffee shop. And so that just kind of organically happened. And that was our first really large-scale project. But that project caught the attention of the city, who then asked us to do the plaza for the 100-year anniversary.
Cool. You know, when I actually interviewed Cindy, for every episode, I always put a Google map in my show notes so that you can go right to the front door of whatever I'm doing, if it's an establishment. And when I sent the blog post to Cindy, she said, oh no, take that out. It's got the old Google picture before it was so pretty. And I don't know if it's still that way. I'll have to look and see. But if it is, I'll capture that. I'll put that in the show notes so you can see like the before and after, unless you already have before and
I
afters.
have some before and after photos,
well,
and
then,
it's amazing.
yeah.
I can give those to you. It's such a transformation.
Yeah, it is. And she specifically said, Barry, take that off, okay? And I said, absolutely. Anything you say, Cindy. On Pier Street, there's also those benches that are done by Natasha Moraga. Was that part of your project as well?
It was. One of the ideas we had was when we were doing the street, we wanted to create these areas where people could sit, and especially with the garden space, in particular the one in front of what's now Chakalaka Bar. We wanted these beautiful benches all along the street where people could just take a moment and sit and look at the plants, and or just take a little break. And so we got Natasha to do all those, and they're really beautiful. And it was a forerunner for what the park was going to look like, because we were just like the model of the park. We had private donors who paid for the benches, and then most of those are like a memorial to someone. But yes, that was part of the project. We also put in new granite paths down that street. Mm-hmm. We resurfaced part of the street. That was a fairly expensive project because landscaping in Mexico is pretty cheap. You know, plants they're not taxed, and they're very reasonable. But any sort of hard surfaces are very, very expensive, and so we repaved the street part of the way, put in all the granite paths, and but it's turned out beautifully. And thank you for noticing those benches, because they really do add, an artistic element to that street that also complements the garden, which is the reason why we want to do the park. Maybe a year or so once they finish their mosaic project there.
Right. Yeah, about 3 or 4 years from now.
Funding is always the issue, but they're going fast. I mean, I walk past all the time.
I don't mean that.
They're working like
they
crazy.
Are. They sure are. All right. Besides Basilio Badillo and Pier Street and the new landscaping and the great job you did there in front of the church, where else will we see your stuff?
Okay, so we are also on Olas Altas, Insurgentes. We do I call it the old market area. It's the area just adjacent to the river between Juarez and Morelos. It's one of the old shopping market areas. We also do Pino Suarez. I already mentioned Basilio Badillo, Avenida Mexico. So these are all the biggest streets in Old Town area. One thing that is important to mention, that the Garden Club, when the streets are repaved and the new sidewalks are put in, the city of Vallarta leaves us a small space about every 40 feet or so, just little holes in the ground, and then the Garden Club takes those openings and puts in vegetation there. So most of our projects that we have done have been really kind of initiated by the city, because the city left us a footprint there to work with.
Interesting.
That was the case over on the Pier Street, for example. They intentionally left some large planting areas and then just never did anything with it. So we came in with a plan and put the plants in. But the dozen or so streets that we're currently on were the streets that the city repaid, put new sidewalks in, and then just leave us these spaces to come in and landscape.
Great. As with a lot of organizations today, volunteer organizations, there are people that are the grunts, right? The people that do most of the big work. And then sometimes there's a lot of work, and it sometimes becomes too much. How do you, or have you, go about getting new blood to come in and help you work?
Well, the organization has grown so much in the past few years, and we really have tried to make it a very active member organization. For example, I mentioned earlier, we have about 200 plus annual dues paying members. And most of these people also are volunteers for us. So We have a board currently of about 15 people, and these 15 folks are extremely active in the organization. We've also tried to make the organization structured in such a way that, heaven forbid, if something happened to me or another key person, that we have backup training and we have someone else to jump into those positions. But I will say one great thing that the Garden Club has done, we found that, especially with a lot of retired folks here in Vallarta, there's so many people who love gardening but live in condos, myself included. And so we tapped into this source via like Facebook and our monthly meetings, where we found all these people who began to look around and see all these plants going in, and they would see us out working. And I think, I would like to get involved with your organization. And so I always tell people, I'll do it now, if you want to get involved with the Garden Club, just go to vallartagardenclub.com or look us up on Facebook, Vallarta Garden Club. And you'll see all the work we do. You can look at photos of our work. But there's also a place online on our website, vallartagardenclub.com, where you can send us your contact information, and we'll invite you to our monthly meetings. Between November and April, we have educational meetings each month at Encanto. And those are usually standing room only meetings where we talk about everything from local plants to Mexican history. It's really, and we have a lot of great speakers that volunteer their time to come and talk to us. But we've been lucky through the plantings to attract a lot of talent that I think and hope will sustain our organization for many years to come.
Excellent. Wow. All right. Well, let's leave the Garden Club for a minute. Let's go out to Puerto Vallarta. This is the part that my listeners like, because they always get some new ideas. I'm going to ask you what your favorite breakfast, lunch, and dinner places are. So let's start with breakfast. What do you like to? What's your favorite spot around here?
Well, I live in the Old Town area, and I walk everywhere. So, for example, I love on Sundays at River Cafe. They have a nice breakfast brunch that has a lot of things that you wouldn't otherwise find. But I also like to be on the water, so sometimes I'll just walk over to Vitea. They have a nice enfrijoladas for breakfast, which I love.
What is that? It's a what?
Enfrijoladas. It's basically like you take a tortilla and then you put a combination of like pulled chicken meat and just different like tomatoes and things, but it's kind of smothered in like a black bean sauce. Delicious. And then it has two like fried eggs on top of that. So it's almost like a huevos rancheros, but with black bean sauce.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely delicious.
I'm putting it on my list.
So I really love it. For lunch, I usually grab something kind of quick. But going back to the water, sometimes I just go over to Blue Shrimp, and they have the closest restaurant to the water, so I just order some tableside guacamole and just have a grilled fish. I love going to Barracuda. Barracuda is a wonderful local little, and I'm also a very casual person, think shorts and flip-flops. So, if my shorts and flip-flops aren't welcome, I'm probably not interested in going there. So I love to go to Barracuda for that reason, that breezy, place, very casual.
Yeah.
And then for dinner, I would mention Archie's. I love Archie's. I love Tre Piatti. They, make all their own food daily by hand. Their menu changes every 2 weeks. I love red cabbage. It's over by the Rio Quale. Those are some of my favorites. Trio. So as I said, I walk everywhere, so I should pretty much just strike out and find something along the way.
Yeah. Any little hidden fonda that you can think of that you...
There's a little place that I love to go and it's called The Bells, but I'm drawing a blank for the moment, but it's right next to the Iglesia de Guadalupe. They have great little tacos and sandwiches for lunch, so sometimes, like especially if I want to go check the plants over in the plaza, I'll go there and have like a little torta or something like that, and it's really nice. It's literally just to the right of the cathedral, so a little hole-in-the-wall place, but I love it.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll have to check that out.
And another one I was going to mention that I really love, because One thing we've been doing is we have been traveling quite a bit inside the country, and last year we were down in Oaxaca, and I really love the food of Oaxaca. They absolutely love spices, etc. And I'm going to mispronounce it, but El Rayan over in Centro, I think they have the most authentic food similar to Oaxaca, and I really love going over there. Carmen, the owner, is a wonderful host, and they have great food that I think is very flavorful and is a bit different than what you might find in Vallarta.
Nice. All right, so let me ask you, if you were going to leave town, let's just say for a day, just to get out and come back, you're not going to stay somewhere, you're coming home, where would you go?
Well, usually, if I was going to go just for a day, I'm fortunate we have a car, so we can jump in the car. We love driving over to San Sebastian. That's a beautiful day trip. We can go just have a very casual lunch, stroll around town. I love all the cobblestone streets. Their church there, the Iglesia, is absolutely gorgeous. It's a beautiful drive over, especially in the rainy season. It's so green and gorgeous. But, we love driving down to the Botanical Garden. We go down there sometimes every week or so because it's a beautiful stroll. Otherwise, we would go north and head up towards Sayulita. But we're not afraid to jump in the car. Last summer, we did some beautiful driving trips all around Lake Chapala. We visited a lot of the Pueblos Mágicos. And we also took a driving trip to Morelia. Gorgeous historic town with beautiful cantera architecture. I absolutely loved it. We have driven to Guadalajara many times for music programs. We were fortunate. We saw Plácido Domingo directing the Jalisco Orchestra.
Wow.
I think the Jalisco Orchestra is great. I think a lot of people in Vallarta may not be aware that Jalisco has an orchestra like that, but we saw Plácido Domingo conduct the orchestra and the chorus. It was as good as anything you would see in a U.S. Concert hall. We also saw St. Martin the Fields, Academy of St. Martin's the Fields toured Mexico last year. We caught them when they were in Guadalajara. So we're not afraid to get out and about. It's very safe. We love driving, and in the summertime especially, the scenery with all the wildflowers on the highways and the mountains, it's absolutely stunning.
See what you guys are all missing when you don't come here during the summer months. I mean, sure, you might have to shower 14 times during the day, but wildflowers, okay? We're talking wildflowers.
Absolutely gorgeous, like these huge cosmos. And I mean, it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah. If you had a word of advice for a first-time visitor to Puerto Vallarta, what would it be?
I think that I did not know how friendly the people were here, so I would advise people when they first visit Vallarta to really engage like the locals, because if you ask me the one thing that I love the most about Vallarta, you might expect me to say the things I said earlier, like the mountains and the water and the beaches. But the thing that I really love the most about Vallarta are the people here. They're probably the nicest people I've ever seen before, and I've traveled all around the world. So I would say if you come to Vallarta, really do a great job of engaging the local people and asking them about their city, about what the things that they like that they're proud of, that they want you to see. It's very easy to go to TripAdvisor and just kind of get stuck on the touristy type things to do. But I really do love mixing in with the local population here, and you're just kind of seeing what they like to do and where they like to go, and just really try to see things from a local perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Any words of warning or something like that you could give someone?
Oh, I guess if I had to give any words of warning, it depends on how. For example, I have a fairly sensitive stomach, so I would say just be careful about the water. I always drink bottled water and just make sure your fruits and vegetables and stuff are washed. But I really don't have a lot of warnings to give people because having traveled so much, I think Vallarta is among the safest, friendliest, easiest places in the world to get around. So not much in the way of warning from me. So
Excellent. Okay.
I mean, I love it here. So you know,
I know. Okay. Here, I'll make a warning for you. Don't stop in the Shark Tank. All right. All right, let's go back to the Garden Club. How do people find you? You said it already, but let's do that again.
Okay, so the best way is to go to vallartagardenclub.com on the website, and then really we have our most photos and stuff posted on Facebook. So if you look up Vallarta Garden Club on Facebook, then you'll see all the postings of all the streets that we've done. You can look at photos of our events, of our membership meetings. We do also post when we have events. We put invitations out there. We have about 10,000 people who follow us on Facebook. So we use Facebook primarily as the method of communication. If you don't have Facebook, you can go to vallartagardenclub.com and give us your email address, and we do send out monthly email invitations, announcements, just general interest things about what we're doing just once a month. We're very careful not to overwhelm people with emails, but it's for the people who don't have Facebook. But we're always really looking for people to get involved because, especially in this day and age, anything you can do to help green up and, improve the kind of global climate for ecology is, I think, a great thing to do. So we're always looking for people to help us volunteer, to make a donation, to help buy plants. All the money that comes to us, we literally just take all that money and put it right into plants. So we're strictly volunteers, so all the money goes right to the mission that we have.
Yeah, right into beautifying our beautiful Vallarta, which you guys have really done a great job of doing. Is there anything I've missed?
I think that's a good overview of what we do. So, like I was saying, if you're back next season, if you're a seasonal guest, try to drop in on one of our monthly meetings at Encanto. If you're just here vacationing, walk down some of the streets we've mentioned, Paseo Badillo, the Pier Street, the Plaza, Avenida de Mexico, and just take a look at some of the plantings we've done. The model that we have here is used by many other cities. For example, Chicago, Santa Fe, they do rely on a lot of private organizations and citizens to help landscape public areas, in Vallarta is no different. So we always do appreciate when people notice the work we've done. And it's also, I will say, very gratifying when we're out and about. Particularly the older Mexican population here is always so grateful, and they will stop in Spanish and say thank you for all the work you're doing, and it's a very rewarding feeling. So most of our volunteers come week after week after week during the high season or in low season, and really do get involved and to enjoy that kind of work. So if you love gardening, come and join us.
Absolutely. And what fun that would be, you guys. So, David, thank you so much for talking with me today. Thanks for giving me a chance to introduce you and
my pleasure.
PV Garden Club to my listeners. I really appreciate that.
We'd love to have you join us and to learn more about us. Thank you.
All right. Wow. Thank you, David. What a lot of great information. And what great, hard, wonderful work that these people do at the Vallarta Garden Club. Now, remember, if you're going to be in town, January 21st, 2020, they're going to be having that Fiesta Tropical over at Oscar's, and that's their annual gala. So make sure that if you're in town, you check that out. I'll get you that information, and we'll talk about it a little bit as the date approaches. And remember, they have those monthly meetings at Encanto, and you might want to go check those out as well. It was just so exciting to meet with David, wasn't it? Now you can get involved too. You check out their Facebook page, check out their website. I have links to those, and I have some wonderful pictures of all the work that they've done. I've got pictures of some of the volunteers too. I've got some future renderings that they have there of Parque de los Azulejos that he was talking about there. And check those out. They're beautiful. And wow, they get a chance to do that, they will make that park even more beautiful than it is turning out to be. All right, anyway, check those all out. Like I said, they're in the show notes. All right, well, that should do it for this week. Next week, stay tuned for more on-the-ground reports from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with travel tips, great restaurant and excursion ideas, and more. But until then, remember, this is an interactive show where I depend on your questions and your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. If you think of something that I should be talking about, well, please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us your message. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, you must go to vallartainfo.com, that's JR's website, and reserve your tour through him right from his website. Remember, this is a value-for-value proposition, my friends. His experience and on-the-ground knowledge of everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for your making a purchase of a tour that you would do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying thank you. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you were going to use someone else, so just do it, really. And when you do take one of those tours, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off a message. And don't forget, he's got his maps, his DIY tours, his revitalized happy hour board, and more. And I have links to all of those in the show notes. Once again, if you like this podcast, please take the time and subscribe and give me a good review on any of the pod listening things that you listen to. That way we get the word out to more and more people about the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Remember, I made it easy for you to do that with every episode I create. And if you haven't been to my website, you need to get there. Have a look. I got links to the places we talk about. I've got the pictures. I've got more right there in my blog post and in the show notes for each episode of the show that I create. So check them out for sure if you haven't already. All right? All right. Thank you. Thank you, David Muck from the Vallarta Garden Club. Join them. Go to their January fundraiser. I got links. I got pictures. Meet some of the greatest people who love this town so much. Check their thumbs to see if they're green. Anyway, they want to make this place that we love so beautiful and colorful and clean and fresh. Thank you so much for doing that. And thanks to all of you folks for listening all the way through this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. This is Barry Kessler. I'm signing off with a wish for all of you to slow down, be kind, and live the Vallarta lifestyle. Nos vemos, amigos.
De Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar, samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar. Solo camino eterno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río cuando todo está en calma. Pronto cae la noche, me brillas Puerto Vallarta, samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto